Welcome to the Hours. This is the SAVI Coaching podcast where we dive into the big question of the week. We go through our mailbag from our SAVI community, and then we share a game of the week, and we'll throw a teach better or a practice better tool or tip of the week. And we're going to jump right into the big question. And this is one that actually came from our community. It had a lot of engagement. A lot of coaches were chiming in, which we always appreciate. So I thought we would dive into it as the big question today. Coach Brian was asking, what cheat codes or advantages have we found for winning with teams that are a little less athletic? And he went on to say that his team has pretty good depth, pretty good skill, just average athleticism. So what are the cheat codes? And then maybe how would we implement our offensive and defensive game plan? We always want to start by zooming out. Okay, so if we're looking at advantages, cheat codes, I would start with being an outlier. Be the team that in your conference or in your district that teams really have to prepare for. So most leagues are copycat leagues, right? Especially at the college level. In my experience at the college level, is like this team started playing some 2-3 zone and won a big conference game. So the next couple of teams are going to start playing a 2-3 zone. I would resist the urge to do that. Every season I would ask myself, can I do what everybody else in the league is doing and win the league? If the answer is no, then what are we doing? We're playing a loser's game. So let's be the outlier. And you can do that in several different ways, but I would pick a game plan or a game model and identity that you really believe in. The more you believe in what you're doing, the easier it is for your players to buy into it, the more convicted you're going to be, because an identity is something that you stay with through good and bad. So resist the urge to always be the team that's changing throughout the year based on results. Direction is more important than speed. So I would evaluate, are we getting better at what we're doing? If the answer is yes, just continue to stay with it no matter what the results are. Let's say you adapt some new things, race in space, lock left, drive in space, whatever you're starting to build your identity through. I would resist the urge to hang on to your old stuff too. We're going to run race in space and really emphasize pace, but we're also going to slow it down against these teams that are more athletic than us, or against certain opponents. We're going to change. We're not going to lock them left because their best player is a left-handed player, or we're going to go to a different style against certain opponents. I think that's when we get straddling. We get caught up in straddling, and we sometimes settle for mediocrity there. We settle for average because we're not going to be great at anything. I think when you have an identity, you develop strengths that are so strong that your weaknesses don't even matter. And that's where we want to get to. So can we be so good at what we do that, we're really skilled, we're extremely tough, we execute really well, our system is an outlier. So the fact that we're average athletes, it doesn't even matter, right? And it's going to matter, but it doesn't show up in games. Can we win games in spite of that? I mentioned toughness, which kind of gets me thinking intangibles as well. Even if you are a really athletic team, I think our teams as coaches, we never play hard enough. We're never physical enough. We never rebound enough. We're never tough enough. So if I'm less athletic, I'm going to double down on those things too. And those are all intangibles, which I'd invest in my culture too. I think when you have the intangible piece, you have a system that's cohesive, you can teach it well, you believe in it, and you invest in your culture, you get that flywheel effect where the sum is greater than the parts. I think when your approach is right, everything follows and flows. And that's where you get that flywheel where you might get into a point in your season where it's like, hey, we're winning games that we didn't think we were going to win because of our athleticism. So that would be my advice. Some coaches in the community had some really great input as well. So if you're not in the community, make sure you join it. We'll have the link underneath our YouTube feed and in the description if you're listening on an RSS feed or your favorite podcast platform. All right, we're going to go to mailbag here. Here's a question about practice. I love talking practice. It says, in your experience and opinion, what is the ideal practice length for a high school team? I don't even know that we have to distinguish between levels here. I would say no longer than 2 hours, and actually 2 hours maximum, and not every day. 90 minutes, I feel like, is a sweet spot. Picture it this way. We want our practices to represent the game as much as possible. So our practice, should mimic the intensity level in the flow of a game, meaning when the game starts, right, we break our huddle, we walk from the bench to the court, we tip it up and play. We want to start really fast and we want to sustain that for 4 quarters. That's how I design my practice. And I think 90 minutes, if you're running a games-based approach, high intensity, very competitive practice, oftentimes after 90 minutes, I was looking at my practice plan and saying, like, what else do we need to do? And we also shot every day for at least 30 minutes. So basically our practice was 30 minutes of shooting of some sort. Some of that was blocked, and basically as much competing as we can in 60 minutes. Ideally, it's all competing in 60 minutes. And that doesn't mean we're just always playing 5-on-5. You can have training games in there where you're using some guided defense, where it's that +1 mentality where we're adding a read, we're adding a decision, where we're just getting rid of on air or block practice as much as possible. So I would recommend 90 minutes. Sometimes we practiced as a high school coach before school, and we'd go for 70 minutes or so. Those were always our best practices for a few reasons. One, it made me be really, really selective on what we did. So when I designed that practice, I spent more time designing shorter practice because it's tough to eliminate things. So we had no fluff in there. It was all of the most important stuff. It was things that flowed really well together. So our transitions were really smooth. And I think because we were only going for 60 to 70 minutes, our guys could maintain just an elite level of energy and communication. Coaches could stay locked in better. I think we've all been there at practice where towards the end of practice, we all start to tail off. I would do this. When you feel that tail off kind of hitting you, it's probably already hit your players. In practice on a positive note, let's get out of there. So I would recommend you go 90 minutes. If you're having trouble to go 90 minutes, I would say evaluate what you're doing at practice or evaluate your approach at practice, which might be a good big question in the future. All right, next mailbag. We had a question on screening game or flare game, and I'm glad this one came through because a lot of coaches have asked me about screening game. One thing that we have done in the drive and space offense, and race and space does it as well, is we blend multiple actions or families of actions. I've always referred to them as just series, but a series has a family of actions in there. For instance, Rose series, we can go fingers, fan, follow, wave, push, truck. Those are all actions within Rose series, but we don't only run Rose series. So when I say screening game, it's more of traditional screening game because Rose series are corner cuts to design to create space and advantages, but not so much with screens. So if we're going to get some off-ball screening, some split stuff, or some chin, some Princeton elements in there, or ball screen action, whatever that is. So screening game can be whatever you want it to be. That is what screening game is. And what I have done over the years is worked with coaches. Typically, they want to run Rose series. That's why they would come to me. But they'll say, "Look, I really like split action. How could I incorporate that?" I met with a coach earlier today. He wanted to incorporate some staggers into his conceptual offense. So we helped him do that seamlessly. I think the best way to do that is make it part of your core offense. So design offense, and really anything that you're planning, implementing, designing, do it with the end in mind. So what are the actions that I want to use to create advantages? If stagger is one of those, or a ball screen is one of those, okay, well, how can we design a system that has ball screens, staggers, and Rose series in it? That is why we called our offense flow. We would flow between Rose series and our ball screen game, or Rose series and our Princeton game seamlessly, and that's what gave us our flow. Tyler likes to say offense flows like water, and I love that visual. So the question was, what is screening game and what is flare game? Really, they're one and the same. Flare game would be years where we relied on the flare screen. as a second series that would complement Rose's series. So I love flare screens. So we ran flare game. We ran bottom flares and top flares, the top flare being that inside flare. And that was the other way outside of Rose series that we would create advantages in offense. All right. Let's go one more mailbag. I liked this one. It's applicable to this time of year and actually what we're doing in our August cohort. So if you're not familiar, our August cohort is the ultimate blueprint for your preseason, which means we're taking you through all aspects of leading a program and giving you a blueprint for success. The more organized you are as a coach, you're setting yourself up to be successful. So this question was about timeouts. Give me some examples of effective methods when conducting timeouts, which I love that this coach is thinking in terms of timeouts already. We gave you an off-season identity checklist. One of the items on there was timeouts. Let's evaluate what were our timeouts like. Were they effective? What could we do better? And here are some practical ideas. Number one, if you want your team to run to your timeout, I think that is that could be an identity piece, right? Like if we race up the floor in transition, well, we always race. We race for timeouts, we race for subs, we race in transition offense, transition defense. So if that's just part of our identity, if we're going to get our team to run to the timeout, here's an idea you can use at practice. At random points of practice, blow the whistle, give me a hard whistle, yell timeout. Blue team runs to this bench, gold team runs to this bench. So we're sneaking that in throughout practice, and it's unpredictable oftentimes, like timeouts are in the game. So one, have a decorum, right? Have a system for what our timeouts are going to look like. First one might be running to the bench. Second, I usually couldn't help myself. I couldn't resist just giving my team one thing. So sometimes just say, give your captain one thing just to kind of center their focus as they go to the bench. And you as a staff meet. And I would lead with questions as a head coach to my assistants. If an assistant has an area that they're geared to or locked in on, ask, hey, what do you think about our rebounding? What do we need to stop, and keep doing offensively? So pick their brain. I often didn't want to talk first because I felt like I would poison the room. And if I said, hey, we're just not getting great shots, then I felt like all my coaches were going to think about was our shot selection. So I'd want to get their input. And then of that, it's my job as a head coach to decide what's the most important. And I'm going to take that one thing to my team. I've already given them one thing. Hopefully they're talking about that right now. And I would also lead with the question when I get to the bench of, hey, what are we seeing out there? I think sometimes coaches are hesitant to ask their teams questions because they think that, well, what if they have the wrong answer? Well, there are no wrong answers. All you're finding out is where their attention is focused to. So if you're thinking shot selection as the head coach and they say, our defense, right? Our ball screen coverage isn't working. Well, at least you know what they're thinking, and maybe they're seeing something that you're not. So I would direct their attention to one thing. I like to lead with questions to see where their attention was before you got in the timeout. Give them one thing, and then maybe give them a measurable. So let's say it was shot selection in this case. Just say, hey, look, coming out of this timeout, let's be committed to finding 9s and 7s. Let's see if we can go the rest of the quarter and only shoot 9s and 7s, right? Or let's see if we can go the rest of the quarter and not take a neutral shot. But let's just give them one thing. Players remember what they think about. And then if we can give them something measurable, that way at the end of the quarter or the next time out, we actually have something to measure. All right. So last mailbag question, which is actually going to lead to our game of the week, which will also flow to our Teach Better section for this week. So game of the week. I'm sorry, last mailbag, which will flow into our game of the week. This coach asked, what are some ways to get players to grab the ball out of the net quickly? So I love that this coach is thinking in terms of grabbing the ball out of the net quickly, because I will say this, after watching film of hundreds of teams, visiting with hundreds of coaches, the number one part of transition that prevents a coach from getting the pace that they want is the outlet pass or the inbound pass. So you want to get the ball out, you want to get it in, and then you want to get it up the floor. I would say get it out is the lowest hanging fruit, or the part that coaches miss often. I think we hold our teams accountable for eyes are up, pitching ahead. We're racing the ball up the floor with the dribble. We're sprinting our lanes, but I think oftentimes we miss the get the ball out of the net. So like the fact that this coach is thinking in terms of that. Here are some practical tools you can use for getting the ball out of the net quickly. Is anything that you do, play 3 seconds longer. I think great teams are really good in those unscripted gray area moments of the game. Rise of the shot. Great teams crash the boards offensively. Or if you don't crash, great teams get back when they're supposed to. So in those in between moments, let's be great, which might actually go back to our big question with making a lesser athletic team better. Be great in those in betweens. So let's extend every drill or game by 3 seconds. If we're playing one-on-one in the half court, if I'm on defense, if I get scored on, I'm going to grab the ball out of the net quickly. I'm going to get it out. And then maybe we get it into a coach. Coach hits the next offensive player. They play one-on-one. So now we're working our outlets. But I would try to incorporate the next phase of the possession and everything that we do. One-on-one, if it's a missed shot, so I get a stop, I've got to get the rebound, and I've got to use my bust out dribble to get out of the dead zone. So I start to train be your own outlet, which is going to be the way that we start or initiate our pace and our miss break. So that would be one way. Here's another game that you could play. Is play 5 on, it doesn't matter, 5 on 5. I was going to say 5 on 5, but it could really be 4 on 4. You can do this for any small sided game, but I would use this in the full court. Let's say we're playing 5 on 5, blue versus gold, for example. Blue's got the ball, they're on offense. Gold is on defense. Let's say blue scores. Okay. So offense scores, defense. If you don't get if the ball hits the ground, then we're going to give the ball back to blue. So they would check it up top, and we're not going to play the other way. So blue's on O, gold's on D, blue scores, gold lets the ball bounce when it goes through the net so we don't get the quick inbound. Whistle blows, gold, you've lost the opportunity to play offense. You're going to play defense again, blue, check it up top. You could do it that way, or you could do it this way. If the ball bounces, gold forfeits the right to play offense. They go back down on defense, and blue team gets to grab it. They don't have to inbound it. They just be their own outlet, and they can go the other way. I would start with keep it in the half court and then see if you can progress. We'd call that full court make it take it, where that would actually be a game that we would play is if you score, you get to take it and go the other way. So make it take it, but in the full court. All right, that leads me to our game of the week. It is one that I call long and short. All right, so I'm going to pull it up here. And what you're going to see is a transition drill. And I'm going to show you how to make it a game because that is always the goal here. So ball goes through the net. You're going to have an inbounder that's going to get it out. You are going to have a racker come to the ball. And then we're going to have our runner or our lock. I love how we're sprinting. You can see his legs are up. We got almost like a butt kick there. We're not looking back for the ball yet. One thing I would improve on this is I would want my player to roll out to the right side. Our racker's coming to the right side. I want to roll out to the right side so we know what side that the ball is going to be outletted on. Nevertheless, we get it out, we get it up, we get it in, and now we get it up. And we're going to finish with our 9. So our locks rule is if no 9 corner here, there's no defense, unfortunately, because this is a drill. So we're going to finish with a 9. Our racker becomes our inbounder. So that's the rotation. Now we're going to grab it out of the net. Nice job of rolling out. We have a racker line and a runner line. So this would be our lock here. We get it out. We get it in. We get it up. We finish our 9. And our racker becomes our outlet. So you have 4 lines in the corner. I like this one early. Warm up gets everybody running, good communication drill. But I also use this to start to install transition. You can start to use this to start to teach terminology. We've talked about a couple behaviors that we want to see our locks have is we don't look back for the ball. We are tagging the sideline or running up the sideline. We're talking about rolling out right for our inbounder. And then we talk about our racker getting the outlet outside the dead zone. So you're starting to teach your roles and responsibilities in transition, which is why I like this as an early season one. Now, as promised, this is how we turn this from a drill to a game. The player that scores the layup. So we're going to go back on this rep here. Number 10 in orange, if you're watching on YouTube, scores the layup. Now they would get back. So now we're introducing that gray area we talked about, where we're going to go from offense to defense quickly. Can we play harder for 3 more seconds? So instead of shooting that layup and stopping, going to the back of the line, player 10 would sprint back. They're likely not going to get to a position where we can get neutral, but they might contest the layup. And what it also does, it puts a little bit more added pressure on offense to get it out, get it in, get it up, right? Because they know they have a defender coming on. So it just makes it a little bit more game-like. Is it 100% game-like? No, but we've turned that knob just a little bit, which is my teach better tip of the week. Is anything that you do, don't think of it in terms of being right or wrong. Just think of a spectrum of where we can operate. Okay. We have very drill based. We have very games based. Any drill that you currently have in your drill book, ask how you can turn the knob one little notch. How can we move from 0 to 1 and make this games based? I guarantee you're already doing it. I would just encourage you to do it more. That is our teaching tool of the week. We appreciate you spending the time with us. The more engaged you are in our community, the more content we have in the hours. And what we want to do is spend this time is go deeper with you and what you're curious about, what you're planning for in your season. If you're like most coaches right now and you are in the planning phase, I would encourage you to join our cohort, in which we're giving you the ultimate blueprint for your preseason. We already had 1 week of our call and went great. We went over culture and style of play. If you purchase a Grow membership, you get all of our content. So you'll have the recorded cohort, but you'll also be able to attend live, where we do our group consulting calls every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Hope to see you there. Thanks for spending this time with me. We are SAVI Coaching, and we'll see you next time. Stay savvy.